Okay, so I'm at the bus stop as usual, waiting for the bus, so this may barely really be hearable. But I thought about another video idea, or I guess really, as long as it's something that is something that's controversial, I always have video ideas. So, before I start, I'm going to talk about some recent events that I find funny, but I don't really know if they're funny to anybody else. I do feel like this is more likely to be funny and not be like a trauma dump to some people, but I've mentioned before in my playlist funny things that have happened since running away / being homeless, quote unquote. And what was I talking about? Oh yeah, so I talk about like people that would get the schizo label, although it's definitely a spectrum, there's definitely different types. And how like sometimes I meet people like that with the schizo label, and they say some pretty funny things that make my day a lot better. So I was going to the bus stop one day and I was throwing something away. And there was a lady sitting there, and as soon as she saw me throw something away, she was like, "No, don't come over here. Wait, no, hold up, wait a minute." Oh yeah, she was like, "Don't come over here, alpha male. I'm tired of that BS, or I don't have time for that BS or something." And it's like, well shoot, do I really look like an alpha male? I hope not, but I don't know. I don't really know what that means, but it's not what I'm trying to look like. But it's kind of funny though. And then the other day, a separate lady who was walking down the road while I was talking to somebody, she saw us and she was like splitting and saying whatever, but she said something about me being a bald-headed homo, and it's like, dang. That's like, well, it was funny though. It kind of reminds me of that one time. Well, no, not that time. No. How am I going to get this to make sense? Actually, never mind, because I know this is about to come out right. But, anywho, to get to the point, I've wanted to talk about this for a while, but something I saw, or 2 seconds, well, no, a couple minutes of this video, because I didn't really have like a lot of time, because honestly it's like I make videos all the time, but I don't really have a lot of time to watch videos. But this guy made a video about kids that are homeless. Oh, oops, now I'm yawning. Kids that are homeless due to war in Syria and different places like that. Now, I do get that that's a totally different reason for people to become homeless. Although one kid said he was just abandoned. And, what was I about to say? I don't even know, but let me get to the point. It's funny how... Wait, no. Before I start, I'm going to say I'm not trying to accuse this guy of anything or say anything about him. I'm just talking about, like, just how people are and the weird bias people have. Oh yeah, I remember what else I was going to say. I was going to say that once America goes into war, there's going to be a lot of homeless youth and just homeless people in general due to that too. But I mean, even before that, a lot of people are about to become homeless, but there's going to be even more homeless youth due to the same reason. So like, we're going to get the judgment back for all our bias and bullcrap. But now to get to the point. It's really funny how when interview channels, or whatever you want to call them, documentary people, when they go to other countries and they record homeless youth, then it's okay. And people are in the comments talking about some, oh, this is so sad and stuff like that. But when people make videos and documentaries about homeless youth in America, they either say that it's fake, like people do with the movie Streetwise and other similar documentaries, or people just get mad and say, yeah, you shouldn't be recording minors. And even if it's like a homeless youth that isn't a minor, quote unquote, which is a stupid term that's used to okay abuse and literally is there to keep people in abuse situations. not only that, but as I always mentioned, people really seem to not know what the word minor really means and how the laws really work around that. And they make it about other stuff like sexual things that it really has nothing to do with. But anywho, it's okay when people go to other countries and make documentaries about homeless youth and interview homeless youth and homeless people in general. But when people do it in America, people get mad and say, you're making America look bad. Or they say, maybe the person's just lying about being in their 20s and maybe they're secretly 45. Or they say it's fake, or it's the person's fault that they're homeless because they should go back home, or they shouldn't have got kicked out, or racial stuff, or they'll say the person has places to go, they could just go to the shelter, or try to get into CPS, like you can just walk into CPS or something. Which, as I always say, being in CPS custody is in and of itself homelessness. You're going to be living on the streets a lot, even well before 18, and even 21 or whatever age you can. Well, no, I know you could get extended foster care sometimes, up to 21, and sometimes a little over. But being in foster care is being homeless and it's being trafficked, just like with any branch of the human cash cow systems or cash for kids system. It's just going through a whole bunch of RAMCOA. And that's why I always say people in America have this out of sight, out of mind mindset. Just because you throw somebody in a prison or any other institution, so pretty much a prison, and you traffic them and drug them and lock them up where nobody can see them, doesn't take away the fact that they're still homeless and being tortured. What was I going to say? And I know some people will be like, well, they can go to other countries and record homeless youth and homeless children because we have laws in our country, but other countries don't have laws, and so they can do stuff like that there. But here, it's not really legal to record homeless youth and homeless children and make us look bad, quote unquote. People say stuff like that pretty often. Like, I remember back when I was in Manhattan, I think this dude was a Caucasian European J3W, but I mean, it's all the same. And he was talking about how, in other countries they don't have laws, quote unquote, and how it was dangerous for me to be homeless in Manhattan or New York in general because there's a lot of immigrants from Ukraine and other places that don't have laws in their country, so they can't drive and they drive on the wrong side of the road. And it's like, there's a real risk and real things to be worried about other than people driving wrong, to be truthfully honest. That's not even really a serious thing to worry about. That's just prejudice and stuff like that. Which is also why it's kind of funny how the Europeans in America will sometimes pretend that they care about the Ukrainians and stuff like that, but they really don't. In fact, the way it goes, a lot of people seem to not know this, but I've always talked about this. People often talk about how Africans don't like people that have been labeled off as African Americans, which for one, people aren't even all the same tribe or ethnicity or any of that. But what a lot of people seem to not realize is that some Europeans also don't like Caucasian Americans, and in general, a lot of people don't like Americans, and that's only going to get worse. And just like with white supremacy, or really American supremacy more so, a lot of white Americans, they don't like people who speak Spanish, but what a lot of white Americans don't know is that Spanish is a European language, and that real Spaniards are Caucasoids. So that's pretty funny and interesting. But anywho, the guy was just talking about how they don't have laws in their countries, which, I mean, everywhere has some amount of laws. But anywho, it just shows that, just like with the whole minor crisis thing that I talked about, which just shows how hypocritical and biased people are and how much they really don't care and don't know what they're talking about. Because it's for one, how do people go from F them kids to the minor crisis that's been going on? And it's really stupid too, but overall, I feel like the minor crisis is just like Americans' way to try to pretend to like care or to try to have a change of heart, as if that's going to stop America's judgment from coming and stop Babylon from falling. But anyways, anyhow. To get back to the point though, people are just really funny and biased. That's all I can really say about it. You don't want people to record America's issues, but people can go and make documentaries and interviews about the same issues in other countries. Then it's okay. Nobody's mad about it. Nobody's cursing people out. And just like with the Mark Laita thing. Now, of course, obviously he's a creep. He's probably a reptilian, but what interview channel isn't a sexually perverse creep? Like I've always talked about for years, ATL Street interviews and the Marcus guy, and how he's a sexual predator, and he's always been known for like asking people if they ever got essay so he can get off to it, forcing people to talk about their essay and tell them all about all of their abuse, so he not only can tell them that they're lying and get off to it, but also so he can try to find people's abusive relatives and do an interview, quote unquote, where he gets both the people on camera and makes people argue with their abuser. Like, for example, that boy who he first started exploiting when he was a teenager, but continued to exploit into his 20s, and exploit how he was like getting taken advantage of sexually and all types of stuff was going on. But like these two white people that looked like they had chlamydia, to be honest. But anyhow, he was sexually abused by his dad, and Marcus found the boy's dad and made him argue about whether his sexual abuse happened. And he was like, yeah, your dad says he didn't sexually abuse you. And it's like, well, of course he's going to say that. And then he was like, you said that your dad was dead. And of course he's going to say that too, because people don't really want to tell people all their business. But sometimes, especially people that are easier to like be exploited, they feel like they have to tell people that come to them with a camera all their business. That's what they're made to feel like. Because of course if they don't talk at all, well no, actually let me go back a little bit. The exploitive interview person is going to upload the video regardless. So the person who's being exploited and recorded is made to feel like, well, if I don't say anything, people are going to say that I'm lying and that it's my fault I'm out here. But realistically, people are going to do that regardless. As I've said since I was, 4, maybe I think 6 years old, and I mention all the time, I made up this saying, regardless of what I do or don't do, I'm in trouble anyways. And that's how society works with the caste system, and how for somebody else to be up, somebody else has to be down. Regardless of what you do or don't do, you're in trouble anyways, and society's going to hate you regardless. Whether you tell all your business or not, you're going to be painted as the bad guy anyways. And that's pretty much how it goes. And I actually have my own videos where I like reacted to some of these situations. And I know there's even this one thing where like there's this one boy who Marcus recorded, and Marcus was telling him that he was being bad and grown because he was 14 or 15 or something, and he lied about his age to get a job as a dishwasher because he wanted to make money a good way, because he didn't want to be homeless the rest of his life, and his mom was a homeless prostitute. And the boy even said that he didn't want to be interviewed because he was going to get bullied by people he used to go to school with, and how he couldn't even go to school anymore because he was getting bullied because of his mom and because of being homeless. And Marcus didn't care about any of that. He recorded him anyways and uploaded the video anyways. And people did the usual you're bad and grown thing because he had a job, and apparently that's an issue. But then if he didn't have a job, people would say that he needs a job and that he needs to grow up and get a job, because the moment you become full-blown visibly homeless, you're a man or a woman, even though realistically you were on your own before and you were taking care of yourself before. But anyhow, that was okay. And very obviously, due to his Marcus's perversion issues and all that, he's very obviously a Freemason, Black Boule, Prince Hall, Luciferian. They always have these I'm grown complexes, which is really common with Jezebelic black people and southern people anyways. And then they also have like a lot of perversion issues, just like with the Catholic Church, because Freemasonry is a branch of Catholicism. It's a branch of pagan Roman Catholicism. just like the KKK is a branch of Knights Templar Freemasons. And so anyhow, that's one of the many reasons why I feel like people have an issue with Mark Laita, because he's a rich white guy. And I remember I would always talk about Marcus from ATL Street interviews and how I always hoped that I didn't run into him while I was in GA. And that's one of the many reasons, aside from there being no resources and me just being stuck in one spot due to no transportation really, why I was really hoping that I would get out of GA really quickly. And I would be able to get to the West Coast to finish, well, not even to finish laying low, just like be homeless there instead, so like I wouldn't run into Marcus, and also so I wouldn't like get found and turned in. But another thing that all this makes me think about, so I remember this one case, which there's been so many of these, but this one case where like people actually, or the police eventually actually got involved. I don't really remember how, but some teenagers that were 14 plus living in a house by themselves that had been abandoned for years. There's been a lot of these that I mentioned. I remember this one really popular one where like people even eventually found this one sister of the 3 boys that were found. One was found as a skeleton, but these three boys that were found, people are like, apparently they had a sister too, but she ran away years ago and was never found. And then the sister had made a video and she was like, please leave me alone. I'm fine and I'm okay. And I don't need people talking about me or bringing me up. And so there was that. But I remember there was this one time during my abuse evidence channels where this one boy was like, I'm 15 and I've been abandoned in a house for years, and my situation is worse because I'm in a dilapidated apartment and the ceiling's falling apart. And I always wondered if that boy was one of these boys that was found during this one case. And of course I don't really know that for sure, but I always wondered about it. And it's like he was mad at me because I was willing to actually talk about my abuse situation. And it's like, if your abuse situation is so bad, which I mean it is bad, but if your situation is so bad and you've been abandoned in a house for years, and you have your vital records and stuff, get a job and stay at the apartment, or just leave. Because like there's the severe neglect, and then there's the situations where people are on lockdown. And honestly, to a certain extent, the severe neglect situations are better than the situations where you're on like a serious lockdown and your abusers have you chained to a table, or they're your kidnappers, or there's cameras everywhere and it's hard to leave. It's like, if you're not going to be reported missing anyways, you definitely have an advantage over a lot of people when it comes to leaving your abuse situation and like getting a job or something, especially if you can stay in the house and like you haven't been like evicted or anything. But it's like people, they just feel some type of way when you're like bolder and braver than they are. But overall, I do wonder about that still to this day. But anywho, that's what that reminds me of. But there was another case with like some teenagers, and I remember there was this one comment where somebody's like, oh my gosh, how are they able to take care of themselves at this age? And somebody was like, I worked 3 jobs at that age. And it's like, Americans and Western people, they want to abuse, torture, essay, and infantilize youth, but also hold them captive at the same time. Just like with the thing, especially like in the black community, where people like holding people back and holding their relatives back and keeping them from ever like accomplishing anything by telling them, if you ever go out into the world and if you ever leave, you're gonna get R-worded and beat up with a baseball bat, and somebody's gonna shove a syringe down your throat the moment you leave the house. And that's what happens when you run away. And it's really funny, but it's like, all of that is fear-mongering to keep people from living their lives and to keep people from getting a job and just doing things that society claims you're supposed to do and the Matrix claims you're supposed to do. But people really don't want you to do it. They want to sabotage you and then talk junk about you for not making it, or quote-unquote making it anyways by Matrix standards. And it's like, realistically, those ages, I mean, those people that were trapped in a house really could have like taken care of themselves, and obviously they did. Like, they're not like newborns or something, but they were definitely infantilized and not taught anything and made to feel scared. And so they sat in the house and played video games. And I'm not gonna lie, I understand the reasons why people would do that. And I mean, they were even like really underweight. they were like 70, 80 pounds or something. And it kind of makes me think about like how people would always tell me that people that believe that there's a system put in place to save you when there isn't, you save yourself. People would always tell me, well, if you're 80 pounds and like, shouldn't like some doctor, mandated report, or somebody care about that? Nobody cares about any of that. You save yourself. And that's how the world works. And it's like, people want to infantilize and hold you captive in bad situations. And so, there's that. I forgot to mention the part of Marcus from ATL Street Interviews and how he's predatory to literally everybody. Men, women, boys and girls. He's always trying to get somebody to move in with him so he can have sex with them. Like he did with those two girls that he kept interviewing. And I remember like one of the girls even got back on the interviews, or she did another interview, quote unquote interview, at 15 or 16 to try to clear up the issues, because she was talking about how she got put in a group home and mental facility because of Marcus. And then it's also like the fact that a lot of people that he runs up on with a camera, they don't want to be interviewed, but the people that go to Mark Laita do want to be interviewed and tell their story. But people have this out of sight, out of mind, and children are meant to be seen, not heard mindset, which abusive people and ageist people always say, which was made by a sexually abusive pagan Roman Catholic priest, of course. But it's like, it's okay for Marcus to interview people who literally say they don't want the camera in their face, but it's not okay for Mark Laita to interview people who want to be interviewed and want their story out there. Because it's like, one of the things about your story being out there is that if something happens to you and you disappear, people are going to like wonder like, okay, what happened to you? But also, it's just a way to tell your story. People are mad because Mark Laita and other people like him expose Babylon for what it is. And so, anywho, to get back to the point, Marcus also wanted to get with that one light-skinned dude. I can't ever remember his name, but I mentioned him earlier. And then there's also a video where like he asked this one midget dude who was like 20 or 21 or something if he made midget porn and all types of stuff. And it's like, why do the videos always have to go there anyways? And it's like, he's forcing people's essay stories out of them, which, as I always say, something that I realized a little 1 year, if even that I lived in GA, is that GA is one of the many places with a principality perversion over it, which America has in general. But it's really bad in GA, just like in Cali. In fact, it's really bad in the South in general. I noticed that most of the kids, and even the adults, most of the kids that I knew, male and female, have been or were being essayed. Everybody was turned out because everybody's been essayed. And that's something I used to always talk about, even back on the evidence channels when I was still in GA. And even back during, before I ran away and I was still in my abuse situation. Okay, lastly, I completely forgot about a whole bunch of things. So, I mentioned this a couple of times before that, like, I've seen people say that, like, if anybody's claiming that they were homeless at 13 in America, then that means that they're just nuts. And realistically, I mean, you definitely don't see a lot of homeless youth walking around, although if you're in a place like maybe Cali or like Oregon, you may sometimes like find them, or especially a lot of them in Portland or something, if you're like not pretending that they're not there. But realistically, due to the legalities and just like other stuff with risk, homeless youth, even like into their late 20s really, especially, they're typically like hiding and blending in somewhere. Like I know in Cali, a lot of them were in college, so like that made it easy for them to like blend in. But since it's not safe, and due to all the legalities, how people will come and tell you about how you're not really quote-unquote homeless because there's somewhere you're supposed to be at that you're not at because you're hiding from somebody, or you did something to get kicked out. Due to stuff like that, just the poor treatment in general of homeless people. And of course, as I already said, the fact that you'll get charged, locked up, and then sent back wherever you escaped to your traffickers, your abusive family, whoever, if police find you. Homeless youth do have to do a lot of hiding, so I mean, there's plenty of people that have been homeless by themselves since they were 7 years old, but due to how unsafe it is, being abused by different random people, how they'll get talked junk to because they're not where they're supposed to be at, and the legalities around it, they have to do a lot of hiding. Then of course the fact that like a lot of people are hidden homeless, so they're passed around to different friends and relatives and family friends, staying with neighbors, or living with chomos. That's really common. A lot of people have to do that due to needing someone to take care of them or needing help with stuff, and nobody else is gonna like help with it. And also with the legalities, because like I mean, if you're living with a chomo, that's your guardian, so you don't have to worry about like police coming and scraping you up because you're not outside. And the thing is, as I always mention, even if you're not a missing person, you still would have to do a lot of hiding. Which, I mean, you can be a missing person at any age as well. And if you're in a conservatorship or you have like a rich trafficker family, you're going to be hiding for the rest of your life. But anywho, even if you're not a missing person, especially if you're melanated, you're going to have people like calling the police on you pretty often, to where whether you're missing or not, if people like know that you're visibly homeless, it's going to like cause a lot of issues, especially if you're like an anointed or prophetic person, maybe a targeted individual. You may get the police calling you more, and people try to get you locked up more for just like existing. Then missing white woman syndrome is also an issue. So if like you're in an abuse situation or trafficking situation and you escape them and you're reported missing, if you're a white girl, people will come together more to try to get you quote unquote back home safe, to like so that way you don't like, you're not at quote unquote risk of all the different people out there that people feel like are after white women. And then it's also a lot of other stuff with that. People will just fake care more if you're a white girl. And so then also with legality, I mean not legalities, with law officials, if you're a melanated person, you're less likely to be looked for. Or if you're a boy, you're less likely to be looked for. At all, really. Like for me, I've never been or was looked for. It's just like due to like racial stuff. So like I didn't have to worry about law enforcement. Well, I mean I still do, to be honest, because like cops are always going to try to arrest me every 3 months and lock me up for no reason. But as far as like being looked for the missing persons report, no, I wouldn't be looked for that because I'm not white. So, but if you're 14 or younger, the FBI may automatically get involved. And so that's the thing. People will like claim that there are no homeless youth. Like I even mentioned in some other video that some lady was talking about how she wanted to make programs for homeless youth. But in America, a lot of people don't even know that homeless youth is even an issue that exists, which is really interesting. And it's so funny because people become homeless by themselves somewhere from infancy, or more so 7 to 16. So it's like the same people who were homeless that are 70 now have been homeless for decades. Like the stereotypes about people, about the lazy 4-year-old thing isn't really how it starts off. Not that I like that lazy 4-year-old stereotype either, but that's not how things start. I will say though that one of the things that could help is not trying to straddle the fence. You're either going to live off the grid and outside the matrix, or you're not. Not straddling the fence can help a lot. But anywho, the point is, it's like in America, people just had this out of sight, out of mind, cover things up and pretend it doesn't exist, and then it's not a real thing. And that only happens in third world countries, quote unquote stuff. Eventually, America / Babylon will be worse than a third world country, but still, people like to pretend that stuff doesn't happen. Like I remember I was in NC, which is where I'm from anyways, originally, in January, well, in December, like late December to like mid-January. And I remember this one guy was talking about some North Carolina has laws put in place to keep mentally ill homeless children away. And it's like, well, shoot, I don't know what people really mean by that, but it's a lot of stuff with it, but it's all hypocrisy and biased. And some of the screenshots are about the whole Sixth Commandment culture thing. I have a 1+ hour video about people will say things like, imagine carrying a baby in you for 9 months just for it to unalive you, or you can never unalive your parents and stuff like that, but imagine carrying a baby for 9 months to unalive the baby, or imagine carrying the baby for 9 months to SA the baby. And overall, people use the word red rum backwards, because I don't even know if I can really say that or not, but people use that very lightly in situations where the word really doesn't fit, because that revolves around unaliving somebody for no reason over stupid stuff. And it's like, if that's the case, then war is on red rum, which, I mean, for Western cases it really is, because the U.S. goes unalives people for oil and Nephilim DNA, but people are just really wishy-washy and biased. And of course, the thing I always say, and especially with the screenshot about how there's this one kid in Tulsa who had a $1 million bond, it's like, well, shoot, Epstein's running around that land in Northeast Africa with all the other Swedish, Irish, and German, and Russian, and Turkish people who are pretending to be native Africans that obviously aren't. And it's like, I mean, shoot, where's his $1 million bond? And people will say, well, the kid, he did something really bad, and he was a Mexican gang member. And it's like, that's all really irrelevant. And I'm not saying that whoever was hurt, if anything really even did happen, I'm not saying that, like, what happened to them doesn't matter, but it's like, you always get the crap end of the stick. A younger person will get a life sentence for stealing a bag of chips from the store because they're hungry. But a grown person could, like, do that thing where, like, people steal where they eat it in the store right then and there, and they won't even get charged and nobody will say anything. Which for me personally, I'm not even really into the whole running after people and being a snitch over people, like being hungry, but that's kind of like a side topic. But still, overall, it's like, as I always say, you're a quote-unquote child, or you're a kid, or whatever in the world, until somebody wants to have sex with you, they want to charge you, you committed a crime, you supposedly committed a crime, you unalived your parents or guardian, or trafficker, because that's the issue too. And people always claim that, like, they hate chomos, but whenever the people that are arguing with you in these, or siding with you in the comment sections where you're against people who unalive their traffickers and stuff like that, or their sexually abusive parents, the people that you're on the side of are the chomos. But of course, at the end of the day, chomoism has never not been normalized. It's been okay in every civilization since ancient times. So realistically, people are just faking, and that's something I always say. Never let people convince you that they're stupid. People are not stupid. People know exactly what they're doing. People are always ready to put somebody down, keep somebody stuck in some bad situation. Society is, people really just don't care. They're indifferent or they're an enabler. That's how the Lucifer effect works, which is also pretty much being a flying monkey or enabler. And Dr. Raman has videos about flying monkeys and enablers, and the Lucifer effect was like a psychological study. I'm sure there's articles and stuff about that. But that's how people are. People are inherently genocidal eugenicists, NAZIs. And that's why I'm still supposed to make the video about how children of the corn weren't the bad guys, and also my video about reverse eugenics. But society, especially with the Western and European philosophy of mental illness, society loves to, like, manipulate and gaslight people. And this is really big in the West. If your reality or something that happened to someone you know doesn't fit what people want to hear, want to believe, or want to admit happens, or people are okay with it, and they feel like it makes the country look bad, people will just say that it just didn't happen, and whoever's saying that happened, just like the whole thing, quote unquote, anybody who's saying they were homeless at 13 in America is nuts. That's what people do. And honestly, 13, or really 16 plus, I'll say, that's honestly a good age to become homeless. You're luckier then. Which, as I always say, living outside isn't the bad thing, although people have been so brainwashed due to the destruction of anarchy into, like, false self-sufficiency where people survive off the matrix and money and the government. And I'm not talking about government assistance. I'm talking about the idea that you can only live if you have a job, a house, parents, a family, a car, stuff like that. That's not real self-sufficiency. A lot of people, like, well, let me not even go into that, because then I'll be somewhere else. But a lot of people like to act like they're all that in a bag of chips because they've made it up into the matrix, or maybe they were born into like a Freemason family, or they became a Freemason, or they were born into like one of those bloodline families, and they like to feel like they're all that because they've worked their way up. Or even people that just like they're self-made, like literally self-made, not Freemason, not Greek letter college, not some bloodline family, just people that actually like got where they got through their own work, which is a real thing. But the media and like Hollywood makes people think, or makes people feel like it's not possible, but it is. But still, all that stuff isn't real self-sufficiency, is my point. But what was I saying? But realistically, it's just the poor treatment that you get when you're not doing what you're quote-unquote supposed to be doing that makes any situation bad, even the abuse situation, before you become full-blown visibly homeless. Unless maybe you already were before with your family or whatever in the world, or you were kicked out often. But as I always say, you get treated the same in every bad situation, but people just have a new excuse for why they're doing it. And it always has something to do with how things are your fault or something like that. And it's like, it just goes back to the thing. People are inherently NAZIs. But anywho, you're a kid until you commit a crime or supposedly commit a crime. Then you're going to be locked in jail. And then people are going to be making jokes about how you're going to be getting taken through Virgo Vasal, sodomy SA rituals and all that. Like, that's funny. It's not funny for anybody at any age. And I don't even know what else to say about it. Lastly, going back to the infantilization, how in the West, people like to infantilize the youth. And they want to essay you and abuse you and all that stuff and throw you out into the streets at 6, but then not allow you to get a job. Now, I already have plenty of videos about how the idea of child labor is bullcrap, and that people should learn how to like work and take care of themselves, starting at really whatever age where they can walk. If they can walk, then they should start learning it. And also how I mentioned pretty often that people are all of a sudden doing this whole what about the children craze thing, but it's like, as I already talked about, you're a child until ... But realistically, anybody who's like 9 or at least maybe 10 or older isn't a child. In fact, I know at least in like these old high school biology books that were my aunt's, that I used to read when I stayed with my grandma at 8 to like early 10. I know in those it said that like adolescence is 9 to 25, but I know like a lot of people usually consider youth to be like 14 to 25 or 26 or 16 to 25 or 26. But anyhow, anybody 13 to 16 is a man or a woman. Of course, I'm not saying that like they're fully grown, because there's just a lot of stuff I could say about that, even with the 18-21 thing, but I'm not even going to go into that again. But overall, you're a man or a woman by then. And it's like, in other countries, like for example China, I'm not saying that this isn't like, there isn't an abusive side to this, because I already know that the Cash for Kids system branch, I already know the school system branch of the Cash for Kids system in every country, especially in Asian countries where like people really idolize success and matrix type stuff, that it's very abusive, and a lot of people do end up unaliving themselves and jumping out the windows of their school over being abused behind grades and stuff like that. But realistically, like, people are so abused, traumatized, and infantilized all at the same time, which infantilization is a form of abuse in the West, that, like, what was I saying? Like, a 10-year-old from China could, like, probably pass for, like, just, like, somebody in maybe their late 20s in the US or something, because it's, like, everything really depends on, like, how you're raised. It even kind of goes back to, this, Asian lady I knew, and, I mentioned before how, no, hold up, I'm skipping something. Okay, no, scratch that. I skipped the part about how, like, you'll see that, people learn how to, like, sew and stuff like that from a really young age, which is definitely a lot of, stress when it comes to, like, the school system and, like, it being, forced upon you. And if you're not, like, if you don't have parents that, will, what's the word, be patient with you when learning that stuff, there's of course going to be issues with that. But it's like, people in the West are really infantilized, just like this dude used to say to me, or no, just like this dude said to me once. He hates how people raise kids these days. They either abuse and traumatize them or coddle them so much that they're not prepared for the real world. And then going to the Asian lady conversation, I remember how I was talking to her and we were, like, talking about my abuse evidence videos and just different things that were happening to people around me in the Cash for Kids system. And she was like, people in America, it's very obvious that people in America are all living in their own fantasy lands. And it's really true. People have their own fantasy lands that they live in to go to sleep at night, or because they profit off of whatever the bad thing is that's happening to whoever or whatever in the world. Or they just don't care. They're too scared to get involved. Which can even go back to the thing with, like, the homeless 7-year-olds. Now, I've met people personally who've been through this, being kicked out at 7 and locked up and charged. But I've also seen, like, documentaries and stuff. Like with this one guy. And the video's actually pretty, like, viral. It's old now, like, really old. But he was being interviewed at 18 about how he had been homeless since 7. He was in foster care, of course. And he just been living in the streets. He talked about something I mentioned before, which is that one of the keys to survival is being close and cool with everybody, but not too close. Which also maybe, like, about the attachment issues, but also the fact that people typically are either completely unsafe or half safe, but I'm not going into that again. So people talked about how, like, people tried to quote unquote help him, but he wanted to be a bum. Now, I'm not really sure, I don't even like the bum term. It seems like that's a really common, like, insult for homeless youth on the West Coast, but I'm not really sure, like, how a 7-year-old would necessarily want to be a bum. I don't really know what that's supposed to mean, especially in a country where, like, you can go through ageism and all types of discriminatory stuff for getting hired, like, when you're 7 or even a teenager, even in your 20s. So, like, that's really weird. And then when you're too old, you can go through some ageism there as well. So I don't really know what he's supposed to do or not do. Like, just like in that video about that homeless youth, or that article I read, it's like he was 19, but people didn't even really want to rent to him due to his age. And I remember even my quote-unquote mom used to talk about how a lot of people don't really want to rent to anybody under 25. So it's like, I don't know what a 7-year-old is supposed to do or not do to be in that situation. But anywho, to get to the point, a lot of people would throw up the excuse that they wouldn't want to house somebody who's homeless and that young and who's kicked out because they don't want to be accused of anything, quote-unquote, because they're a quote-unquote minor. But the thing is, if nobody's there to even come and charge you with something, then you're not going to get charged anyways. Like, if there's no parent that's, like, manipulative and talking about accusing people of being, I don't know, a choma or something, or kidnapping their kid, then realistically nothing can happen if you take in people like that. Or people say the whole thing that people say with foster kids and adoption, which is that they rather, like, get somebody who's, like, still a baby because they're not messed up yet, which, I mean, that really depends, because, like, I mean, if the baby went through, like, SRA rituals and, like, high-level trafficking or something, I mean, they would have some issues that maybe, like, dissociated in different personalities or splits that only come up in certain points and times in their life. So, like, the baby could be okay, until like, I don't know, 16 or something, but then something may happen where like one of the personalities may come back up. And it's still really hypocritical because honestly, if you're talking about not wanting to like help somebody because they may be traumatized, as if everybody's not really traumatized, to be honest. I mean, some people definitely have worse situations than others, but it just shows that you're really hypocritical and you don't really care. You just want like a pet or a lab rat, or like kind of like with CRISPR GMO demon babies. You want to pick your baby that isn't traumatized yet, possibly. You won't have to like struggle to raise, which is really interesting. People have that mindset. You want the baby to have blue eyes and stuff like that. That's really how people are. And then the funny thing about it is that when the person turns 18, depending on the person, some people may say, well, you're grown now. If they're 16 plus even, people may say, well, they're grown now, so now they need to just help themselves. So it's kind of like, it's really all biased and hypocritical. It's like, I don't want to help you now because I don't want to be accused of anything because you're a minor. And then when the person gets older, if the person is in a situation where the person, where the quote-unquote helper wouldn't get accused of anything anyways because there's no parent or manipulative parent to report. Like some people say, I mean, I don't really care if you take my kid or not, but then there's some more manipulative Jezebelic abusers that'll say, well, I want my kid to be homeless and I want them to like be struggling on the streets, but if anybody helps them, I'm gonna call the police on them. Kind of like the thing with my relatives, which is why I said that, like, I feel like that Reddit post with the whole never run away thing video I made, it really does sound like something my older neighbor sister would say, because I remember the whole situation from like the part 5 channel, which I made a more recent video about, where my relatives were like having abuser paranoia, where they had this idea that like somebody's helping me, and somebody really gives a crap that much that somebody's helping me. But they were talking about anybody who's helping her, even if you're a kid, we're gonna like get you put in jail and stuff like that. But of course they don't really have the power to do that because like they don't have enough money to pay for a private investigator. But overall, people always have a different excuse for why they don't want to help someone, and then it's like people will say, I didn't want to help for this reason, and then when the person comes out and gets on an interview channel and talks about what happened, then people will say, well, I don't believe that really happened anyways. And it's all games. And that's one thing I learned throughout the whole Cash for Kids system and just my abuse situation in general, and even from the situations of different people around me. As I always say, never let anybody convince you that they're stupid. People know exactly what they're doing. People are not stupid. People play mind games. And then also the other thing I always say, which is that whenever somebody's being abused or something, everybody around knows. CPS knows, the police know, the neighbors know, the school knows, the Catholic Diocese of Chomos knows. All those people know. But people pretend not to believe you as an excuse to not help because they don't care and they don't want to get involved. And that's pretty much how it goes. And people hate interview channels because they expose society for what they are. Like laying low, or you're hiding from somebody who's like an abuser, especially like a rich one, you really shouldn't be doing interviews. And I do know that, like, especially since 2020, so many different documentary interview type channels have popped up over the past couple years that like interview poor people, homeless people, people in crime-ridden areas and stuff like that are really exploitative. And then like oftentimes people are walking around recording people, especially like with the homeless stuff, without people even knowing, and like things like that happen. And you can become somebody who's a target to be bashed without even agreeing to it. But you really shouldn't be agreeing to do interviews if you know you're hiding from somebody, or if you just know that like you have some like abusers that are powerful, or even they're just like really smear campaign, even if they're not powerful, and they'll like smear campaign you really badly. If you were to get online, especially somewhere where it's going to be seen by a lot of people, and talk about anything that's ever happened to you, like me personally, I would never do an interview channel because I just know, well, for one, I don't want to for a lot of reasons, but overall it would put me in a lot of danger, to make a long story short. That's why it's really unfortunate that people, especially like the Billy kid from Soft White Underbelly, especially on Santa Monica Close Up, that one was really exploitative. with the Santa Monica close-up people. But especially like that, it's really unfortunate that people who are in these types of situations that should be hiding are being talked into doing interviews, quote-unquote interviews. And as I always say, your situation is entertainment to people. It kind of reminds me of what people say about monitoring spirits. Your situation is people's popcorn and butter film, pretty much. It even makes me think about what I like to call the white supremacist taming, where like white people or rich white people will like adopt kids that are melanated or Asian or, well, melanated pretty much from the US or another country, and then they take them through all types of taming. They're not allowed to date people of their own ethnicity. They're not allowed to talk to them or be around them. And maybe, well, not even maybe, due to redlining and maybe even the income bracket, they may just not even live around people the same ethnicity as them, so they're never going to see them anyways. Like I mentioned before, how like, even though the reason that I stand out is because I'm the only quote-unquote black kid out here, especially when I was in Cali, that would make me stand out. And I was also kind of like one of the few quote-unquote black people, just like people would tell me. Like the people who had adopted quote-unquote black kids or whatever in the world, they would often like use me as an example, or even like the quote-unquote black man white woman duo, where they both pretty much get together based off of hatred of quote-unquote black women. And it's like, you get with a Jezebelic white woman who's just like your mom, but overall, those people would always like use me as like an example. Like I remember, as I made a video about, I think it was like a little after it happened, this was months ago, I was still in Cali then, and like this white lady was in the car driving by as I was trying to sell my books. And of course people are already going to have their like assumptions about who I am and what I have going on. So she started making jokes about how they would never do their kids like that. You're going to do your kids worse, to be honest. They're just the same, really. But anyhow, what was I about to say? Oh yeah, but it's just like with the white missionaries, with the pagan Roman Catholic and Protestant European hijackings of the Bible. They go to these different countries to do fake philanthropy, just like with the EU and that screenshot I have at the beginning. They essay and traffic and torture people of all ages, or even with the Serpent Seed, J3W, Bill Gates. They'll, what could I say, syringe method, I guess I could say, quote unquote, they'll syringe method, quote unquote, people into infertility as a part of genocide, or they'll release mosquitoes with different bacterial friends, I guess I could say, because I don't know if this is going to get taken down or not. And they'll just take a lot of people out in the name of helping fake white savior type stuff. And like, as I mentioned before, even when I was in Cali, like, I met this one girl who was adopted by rich white people. Both of them were lawyers, and her mom even owned a missionary in Haiti, and her siblings were adopted from Haiti. And the lady, well, the girl was homeless, for one. She was homeless. They were all traumatized. They would be forced to like scrub the basement floor with toothbrushes for getting something to eat. And the girl talked about how she didn't like when people say that her parents were like Morgan and Christina Ross and different people like that, or Madonna, which I don't know if Morgan and Christina Ross are real people or not. I know in Jesse, I'm pretty sure that was the name of the parents, and like it was like with what's that, I can't remember his real, Cameron Boyce, who passed away a couple years ago. And then there was the whole China Ann McClain thing where she started like exposing the industry. He was in there. The show's called Jesse. He was on Disney Channel, but I don't know if they're real people or not. But I know like the parents were Morgan and Christina Ross. I don't know if it was based off of something real, but stuff like that happens pretty often. In fact, I would say that Jesse was a more watered down version of what these people actually go through. And then there was this Asian dude I met. I don't remember what his name is. It was like DJ or something, but he was adopted by rich white people in Cali that treated him worse than an animal. They would like lock him in a room, and they wouldn't let him eat and all types of stuff. And then I remember when I was in Cali, there was this one girl. She was quote unquote black or African or something, one of those. And Her mom was white and they were rich, and I think she had two moms. I think her moms were like lesbians, but I remember I saw her one day and I was walking down the sidewalk downtown, and I was just walking, but I didn't even see her at first. But when she was about to say hey to me, her mom had pushed her over to the side and got in between us, and then gave me a look. And it's like a lot of them, they're not even allowed to talk to people that are like the same ethnicity or similar enough to them. And the point I was getting at was that, oh yeah, it's like, it's really interesting how like these different fake philanthropy people will go to these other countries to fake help people and torture and traffic them in the name of like help. And they'll say like, oh, we're from the West and we want to help people that are in these third world countries, but there's people in America and in the West that like are in the same predicaments, and they could just help people in their own country instead of all the weird fake stuff and going out to go kidnap people.